With the recent upcoming release of the Sandland video game coming up, people may be wondering if it has anything to do with the Dragon Ball series, also made by Akira Toriyama. You see, Sandland was a small manga series that ran from May to August in 2000. The main character was Beelzebub, son of the Demon King. Many readers immediately recognized the appearance of Lucifer as almost an exact copy of Dabura, the Demon King minion of Babidi. So could Beelzebub be the son of Dabura? Is Lucifer and Dabura one and the same? Well, an interesting note is that even on the Dragon Ball wiki, clicking on Beelzebub's page, even just hovering over his father's name takes you straight to Dabura. Interestingly, in the Japanese version, Beelzebub's father's name is just straight up Satan. No, not that Satan. Satan and Lucifer. Both names which is applied to the devil. Devil and demon are often used interchangeably, especially when dealing with King Piccolo, another demon king. In fact, when looking at the year that Beelzebub was born, it even gives you a date of sometime before age 474. So that raises the question, where does Sandland take place? Well, another note to add is that Thief, a demon working for Beelzebub's dad, was also born before age 474. His page even straight up says that his boss is Dabura. So let's check out 474 in the timeline. That is the date given for when Babidi first took control over Dabura. So considering everything so far, could Sandland take place around the time right before Dabura was taken over by Babidi? Something to note is Beelzebub is stated to be 2,500 years old, thanks to official EU Bandai Namco's website, so it would be very possible Dabura to have fathered him sometime before then, especially as we're not given an exact time frame, besides just sometime before age 474 that he was born. But let's try to narrow down when the events of Sandland take place. In the far future, years of natural disaster and war devastated most of the world, leaving only a barren wasteland called Sandland. The river that provided water throughout the land dried up ages ago, and the supply of water is now controlled by a greedy king. The desolate wasteland is inhabited by humans and demons who live in peace together, with the bottled water sold by the king's government becoming increasingly expensive for the citizens to buy. The people of Sandland thirst constantly and begin robbing one another for water and money. Tired of the king's greed, the old Sheriff Rao goes in search for a long-lost slave, presumably located south of the country. He informs Beelzebub, the son of the king of the demons, of the existence of this exclusive lake, which might meet the needs of the inhabitants of Sandland. Along with a wise demon called Thief, the three go off in search for the Phantom Lake. Phantom Lake? That sounds familiar, doesn't it? During the time that Nam returned back home to his village, he learned the lesson of the roaming lake that travels to different villages, that suffers from droughts. Perhaps the lakes are one and the same. That means that the legend could have originally came from the time of Sandland. Possible explanation is that Sandland takes place sometime before age 750. But where in the timeline might be easier to pinpoint. After all, we know that Sandland was run by a king that was backed up by a royal army. Thanks to Rao's history as General Shido of the royal army, we also know that at the end of Sandland, the king had to return the water to the land, as well as his wealth. In fact, we know that King Furry became king in age 733, and we know that he was originally a human before taking the drug Anamorpholine, a drug that turned him into a beast man. Though in the anime, his ancestors were all dogs as well. Perhaps they took an early version of the drug, as he was royalty and his family was rich. As they were wealthy enough, they could have been the first customers. Now remember this part. It's important. It is possible that one of King Furry's ancestors used the Dragon Balls to wish for royalty, as it was stated a few times that the first person to use the Dragon Balls wished to become a king. This may also explain why Earth is ruled by a single ruler. Going on that the royal army is the main armed forces on Earth, employed by the king when disaster strikes. As the Earth at the time of the main series is governed by only one king, one ruler, and there is a theory that the army was developed during King Piccolo's reign of destruction, and has been kept ever since, in case of another emergency such as that. What disastrous event that we know of that happened before Dragon Ball, that could also be a cause for the world to become dystopian, just like in Sandland? That's right, the Piccolo War. And what was Piccolo also known as? The Great Demon King. So perhaps after age 461, the same year in the anime that Garlic tried to take over the Earth as well, maybe exactly 50 years later, the story of Sandland takes place. After all, in age 470, that was when Kami created the Dragon Balls, so probably soon after King Furry's ancestor wished for kingship, so that would mean Sandland takes place in age 511, assuming all the evidence so far. But we're forgetting something. Dabura was taken over by Babdi in age 474, and yet Beelzebub's father has no sign of the Majin mark at all. So how could this be explained? Could Dabura have been given freedom from Babdi for a while? Could there have been a previous disastrous event before Piccolo, and the 50 years didn't start exactly when King Piccolo attacked? How can this all make sense? Well, a simple answer that takes into account all the evidence so far is that while Sandland takes place in age 511, the only alteration we'd have to make is that Dabura isn't Beelzebub's father, but his grandfather. After all, technically Dabura and Beelzebub's dad have different names despite their relations, so unless Babdi changed his name when he took control of him, or Satan/Lucifer was more of a royal title for the ruler of the demon realm, this deduction is a very logical conclusion you can gather. The genealogy of the Demon Kings does make sense. You can even use the anime episode where we see Shulu, the Demon King at the time when Goku was training for the Second World Martial Arts Tournament. So, Dabura is the grandfather of Beelzebub. Satan/Lucifer is Dabura's son. Nice ending, right? Well, that is one possible explanation for everything. There is one more possibility. Instead of Sandland taking place in the past, it takes place in the far future, which is literally where it says it starts. The only reason I omitted it this long is because of the fact that the Dragon Ball world is already filled with advanced technology, like androids or dino caps, so maybe the world in general is a more futuristic setting. But considering the fact that later on in the timeline, during the events of Dragon Ball Online, it's literally described as Earth is divided into pieces, and all the bad guys in the world are teaming up to conquer it, from the Red Ribbon Army, who just so happened being led by General Don, an animal-type Earthling, intending on restoring the animal-human nation, and a bunch of androids. General Bond's goals are interesting, implying he wishes to restore a government. What government? Oh, maybe his ancestors King Fury's kingdom, which during the year 1000 we didn't hear anything of? Well, besides in the past, Goten and Trunks' school helping the royal army fight off the Frieza Force. But nothing now, despite having the Earth also being attacked by the Frieza Force again, Dark Namekian, and Tor and Mira's evil plans. That's right. Toa, the sister of Dabura, and Mira, a future successor to the Demon King, who were the parents of Fu, Dabura's nephew, and his preferred heir. Now, considering the placement of Sandland, what was the disaster? And how does this all fit? Well, let's consider why do demons and humans coexist in Sandland. In Dragon Ball Online, we find out that some of King Piccolo's children had survived the King Piccolo Wars, with some being incubated in places and others that had bred naturally in the wild. Also, any Dark Namekians on Earth after the planet was destroyed by the Frieza Force were also there. Considering this, the demon population would be much higher, especially considering the fact that in an unknown age, Earth is in ruins and under Toa and Mira's tyrannical rule. We also know from Xenoverse 2 that Toa and Mira were destroyed, and Dabura was brought back, so it's entirely possible, as we don't know how long he was alive and all of his actions before Fu's betrayal. So this year would be perfect for Sandland to take place, especially since Dabura is no longer under control of Babidi, but that still leaves the question of when? What is this unknown year? Well, we also have an answer to that. Nowadays, the year is omitted, and is just known as the Unknown Age. However, years ago, back when Dragon Ball Online was more relevant, and before the Xenoverse series, in age 2000, Mira, with the help of Frieza's remnant forces and the Red Pants army, allowed Mira to conquer the Earth. And with that, we have a perfect placement. Considering that General Bond's descendants reestablishes the kingdom, he would be the ancestor of the king in Sandland. Dabura pops in for appearance, telling his son to assist in the quest for the Phantom Lake, which is probably the same as the Roman Lake. Beelzebub would have been born sometime around 500 years before age. Dabura took control from the deceased Mira and Toa, and everything else just falls into place. Dabura is the father of Beelzebub from Sandland. That's my final conclusion. But what do you guys think? Do you think Sandland taking place in the past makes more sense? Was there another explanation on how it could have taken place in that time that I missed? What are your theories? Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. And with that, I think there's just one last thing to say.